This week, I get transported to a whole new world.
And I explain how important it is to get the hell out. Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Garrett, and we watch anime.
Garrett, welcome to a whole new world. We are entering the current era of anime, and a magical land offered to a lot, and I mean a lot, of new titles in anime, especially the past 2 years. There, you will be transported to a land of wizards, swords, and busty catgirls, all for the price of admission of getting hit by a truck. We are discussing this week a genre that it so saturates the market, it is getting, for whether deservedly so, a lot of blowback, and that is the annoying world of Isekai. But before we discuss what the heck that even means, give us a 2-sentence trailer on what new fans can expect from this genre.
Kyle, in an attempt to be Aladdin showing Jasmine a whole new world, you've led me down a rabbit hole of things I find uninteresting, and I did not have enough drugs to endure.
I know, it's like... It's basically like the definition of insanity. It's like when you see the same thing over and over again and expecting a new result. That's what you get out of this genre.
Yeah.
And for some weird reason, it is so popular. So
it was like watching an assembly line of license plates, and in the background is like dun 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 dun.
It's redundancy. It's like cynically made anime, and I think for many reasons, like I don't want to temper too many of our listeners' expectations beforehand. I know we kind of give it away in the title, but we're going to be talking about the genre that has so many titles. I see it all the time, and every time I see the word either a different world or isekai, my teeth grind. But
you don't think of Sinbad or
I don't think of anything other than a cat girl getting like really scared of a man in a big black sword charging at him, that kind of stuff. Normal things. And so this show is another explainer in which we talk about all of the different titles and variants that's going to come out of this genre. We did 3, which I made you watch this week, 3 different series. Garrett, what are the different titles that we got to this week?
First, we kicked it off with Sword Art Online, which doesn't seem to make sense. So that sounds like a direct translation.
Right.
The second one was Overlord. And the third one was so eloquently titled, That Time I Got Reincarnated as Slime.
Right. It's just... it's how like punk music went from like these bands got called the Ramones, and then they got a little longer with Sex Pistols. Eventually we got to like Taking Back Sundays and like Cute Is What We Aim For. The names just get longer and longer and more
right. And they started like naming their songs. What was like the most egregious one from Fall Out
Boy was it one you don't like the most is
the one where
where my enemies are in.
Champagne for my real friends, real pain for my sham friends.
I know, and or my lawyer or lawyers made us change the name of the song so we wouldn't get sued. That kind of stuff. It's like that. When I start to see that, I'm like, we're in the emo phase of anime, and I don't get too far off. On top of explaining what you watched this week, we're also going to be doing a little bit of a quick check. You're going to give your thoughts on whether or not you want to imagine yourself in this world. Would you want to join this situation in the situations that are coming in? Would you want to be with the main protagonist? And what you're going to answer is whether it's Isekai, which means good world, or Isekai, which means no world. So it's either
Isekai,
which is good.
Isekai
is no world. So you're saying good or bad. So I'm doing my best to replicate Rhett and Link, and we'll see how good we do from there. Before we begin and we talk about the shows, though, I want to kind of give a quick explainer of what Isekai is. It literally translates to a different or another world. It's usually found in the title, too. It's usually like, this to a new world, or I got killed and now I'm in a new world. It's that kind of style. And the genre is defined by, in my mind, 3 different points. One is that the main protagonist, through some accident, is transported somewhere that they are truly unfamiliar with. Usually it's in a game style. The second one is that it's usually some sort of fantasy world or game world. And the third is that their presence causes a real disruption of the world in which they're kind of like the main thing that changes history in that setting. So before we go into the things as well, what was the general gist of it? What are kind of some overarching themes that you were seeing when you were watching these?
So whoever wrote these, whoever came up with them, they are huge fans of two series.
Mm-hmm.
They are fans of Final Fantasy, the PlayStation-based game from Square Enix,
Mm-hmm.
and they are massive fans of World of Warcraft from Blizzard.
Right, and yeah.
Yeah, if you took those two concepts and applied them to anime, I mean, it is the formula that they are using, and which we'll get more into.
Right, and the word formula is going to be used a lot because a lot of this stuff is highly formulaic, and I think that's the real gripe that most fans have. And so as a new person, it's going to be interesting in your thoughts of it.
Mm-hmm.
But let's start with what I would like to consider the patient zero of this genre. It wasn't until this show came out that we ended up getting a lot of these isekais come in, and that is Sword Art Online. I don't think there was I think that was the English, they use English as the actual translation. I don't think there's a Japanese name for it. And it's a light novel, so obviously you're going to notice there's going to be some ecchi stuff in the middle of it, but it's a light novel that ran from 2002 to 2008, and then the anime came out in 2017. That's what opened the floodgates and made all these things come out in which, nerd edgelords go out and win the girl because they're so good at video games.
So previous to Sword Art Online, you would find nary an example of this type of anime?
It wasn't as widely accepted, and then it got really big. It's like Attack on Titan. It just hit the world, and everybody loved it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, everybody felt like this is what everybody wants now. They want these video game style lives,
Right.
So tell me, Garrett, with Sword Art Online, the patient zero, so to speak, as I told you, what is this show about? I made you watch 2 episodes each, because as I said, much like with the brother-sister complex, once you get to 2, you're like, all right, I got enough of what I figured. I get the gist of it.
Right.
So what is Sword Art Online about?
Okay, so Sword Art Online follows, and I have to admit to everyone out there, I watched, of these 3 series this week, I watched 2 episodes of each, so I'm going to be a little bit rusty on the names. There's going to be a lot of the protagonist and that guy and the one who wears the hood and things like of that nature.
This character easily could just be called Black Trenchcoat, the character.
Yes. Oh, it's Kikura, isn't it Kikura?
It's Kirito. His name is Kirito. Is what his screen name is. His name's Kazuto. Is his real name in real life? So yeah.
Okay, so Kirito. So the show starts with everyone logging on to this brand new game. All right, imagine Blizzard is releasing its brand new expansion pack for World of Warcraft. Everyone's lined up to buy it. Somehow for this game, some reason, there only 10,000 copies were available. So everyone puts it into their console or their gaming machine at home, and then they put on these VR helmets that hook them into this. And everyone's kind of living in this world, and it's very new. And there's people who are doing this for the very first time. They just bought it. But there's also a handful, a very small percentage of people who are beta testers. So in addition to the people who went out and bought the game, there's a limited amount of people who were game testers through the development phase, and now they're a part of the actual game. And everyone is interacting with what's going on, and we see our lead meet someone who is quite a bit of a hanger-on, and is like, teach me things. He goes by the name of Klein.
Right.
Which is like, super slick. Yeah. And he's like, oh, teach me how to use attacks. Again, so you're going to hear us use 2 terms a lot. First, there is Final Fantasy is an RPG, which is a role-playing game, and it's often a turn-based role-playing game. And for those who aren't familiar with that, Kyle, you can expound upon it if I'm incorrect, because I am not a fan of RPGs, especially.
And I'm a huge nerd for them.
Right. So essentially, if you are in a video game and you come across a boss or a bad guy or whatever, instead of hitting on your PlayStation controller square to strike, triangle to kick, you actually have menu options and you select the things that you're going to do. Right. So this is sort of the world that they're living in, except it's virtual reality.
And there's no magic in this world, so they're really just operating with swords, which I thought was an interesting take. It was like...
There's no magic, they, fly across a screen with, a laser blade. So,
And what I think is interesting that like I think is just so weird and that like no one this world kind of accepted was people are literally putting this virtual reality gear on, and it essentially is like people are paying to go into comas because
Right. So I wanted to bring this up. What this is really, there's a third property that needs to be rolled in here.
right.
We've identified Final Fantasy. We've identified World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Ernest Cline's Ready Player One.
Right, exactly. It's very much that where people put on this thing and then they kind of go into this world.
Right,
So,
and yeah.
and,
So they're in this world, and this guy Klein, after he goes through a training session, he goes, I have pizza being delivered at 5:30, so it's 5:24. Let me get out of here.
bye-bye, and he tries to leave.
He goes to click his menu, and there's no exit button. Now, the lead, he was one of the beta testers, or she, because again, there's some things where you're like, I have no idea how this person is presenting.
Stuff, right.
I suppose it doesn't matter for the sake of 2 episodes. And when they go to click the menu button, it's not there. And he's like, no, it's in the menu and it's at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
There's something wrong. Is it a bug? Well, there's no announcements being made over the loudspeaker of this world that they're in. And suddenly everyone is teleported to this arena or coliseum looking area, and this character comes out wearing a hood, very Darth Maul-y, except you can't.
He like comes out like red goo first. It's like, and then like turns into like basically like a giant like piece of haggis, and then he becomes like this red mage wizard of some sort. Yeah,
right. And this red mage wizard, formerly haggis, identifies themselves as the designer of the game, and also tells all of these people that there is no escaping this game, that you are playing this game to beat the game, and there are 100 levels, and when you clear 100 levels, that's when you can leave. And he informs them, don't hope that your family members will find you in bed and pull the gear off of you, because it emits microwaves and it will fry your brain. So if you die in the game, you die in real life. And he immediately informs them that within this first 10 minutes, 213 of the 10,000 people have been killed. And it's being reported upon all around the world that this is happening. This was, of course, was my issue, because I was like, all right, so the police are clearly going to find this guy in real life and shut this thing down. But, but that's sort of the platform that we start with.
Right, and I think what's interesting about this game, it does have stakes. It's basically like it's people trapped in a video game, but with real death on the side.
Yep.
I remember thinking when I watched this show, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool because I like the kind of death game idea of this genre. I also like to think about that this topic of like people subverting their expectations when they go into fantasy worlds. That like there's actually should be stakes. You can't escape the world. You can't escape your problems, but.
Yeah,
I think.
Oh, and then he pulled the clever trick where, so as anyone knows, when you play a game, you can create your own avatar. You can make yourself look or be whoever you want. You could change genders. You could be fat. You could be
your avatar could be whoever you want.
You could be not. And he gives everyone a mirror. So clever.
Right.
And when they look into it, they actually turn into what they really are in real life.
Right. And so you see like a big dude who's fat, and he's like, I thought you were a girl. He's like, I thought you were 17. So it's like, obviously the incels have found each other, and like and they're definitely having trouble with like getting used to the fact that they're really being shown.
Now, I have to agree with you. The death game concept is cool. Going back to Battle Royale, forget you Hunger Games.
Right.
But there are specific things in this show that if you're not into RPGs or open world games, the reference is lost on you. So when they find out that they're trapped in this world, our lead immediately says, we've got to leave the city. And the person he's talking to says, why? And he says, oh, well, this is an open world game. So there's limited quests. There's limited resources. You got to go out and collect all of these things before other people gobble them up. You always ask me about barriers to entry. Yeah. If you don't know about RPGs,
then this is...
Forget it. Don't even watch the show. You know?
And then not only that, but like there was the big thing that it culminated that really made the show seem like, this is a real legit, like almost like a thriller, is they finally found the first exit to the next floor, and there's a big boss that they all try to get to, and they all just like, let's get together as a team. But then like they realize some people are beta testers. They're not telling who are new players and that they're cheating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And this kind of culminating in like someone actually getting murdered in front of everybody. And
so the first one that we see murdered, I think.
Basically. And I love it because when they go through this thing and like they're going, they have all this information. He's like, oh my God, that's not this sword. It's this other sword. Watch out! Like in my mind, I'm like, was there really that big of a difference with this pig man having a different like weapon and stuff?
Yeah, that's not tar wall. That's
a rapier or some stupid thing like that. I was like, does it really matter? It's a big pig. Just stand back. And so the lead guy who was also a beta tester, wanted this final item so that he can, I don't know, like get the stupid coat that ends up being on Kirito's back. But like I remember like I called this like the lamest final words of any person was like, he's like, I just wanted the final item. Make sure you get it. It's like, I was like, I would be like, oh my God, I'm going to actually die playing a video game. Curse my life. I was a hostage to a man who had a microwave attached to my brain. Like I would have cursed the fates that I was given. This guy's like, make sure you get the coat. And then he fades away, and I was like, "That's so stupid."
And you mentioned this, so Kyle, I'm going to ask you to explain a bit of terminology.
Right.
It came up in last week's episode, and I sort of yesed you and nodded you, and I shouldn't do that because I should want to learn new things. Could you explain for me and the people at home what is an edgelord?
Yes. So an edgelord is like a joking internet way of explaining someone who is edgy to almost a comical level. Like, have you ever seen or played Final Fantasy VII before?
I've definitely seen the artwork.
Like the artwork. So we're talking like a big sword, huge spiky hair, never smiling. Everything's dressed in black. Like
they have like a trench coat with a collar that comes
with a collar really
here.
high. Yeah, like it's edgy to a comical level, and it's just to make fun of the person. Like, and they all have names like, you know, Mystic Dragon or some stupid thing like that.
Except in FF7, I think at that point they were trying to be legitimately cool.
Right, exactly. And it's like, imagine
now it's
like,
become self-parody.
Right, when it's so when you're now self-aware of like the corniness of people who try to be too edgy, that's what an edgelord is. Like, you know, they're always like got huge swords or big guns, and they're constantly grimacing, and they're just like always like, I'm going to be the silent guy, and I'm not going to do any of my emotion.
Would you say that the game designer in Grandma's Boy is an edgelord?
I'm guessing so, but he was less like edgy to a nerdy thing. Like these are people who are legit
cool.
Like cool.
Yeah.
But it's just but it's like a person being a good waiter, but they work at tchotchkes or shenanigans, so they wear like way too many buttons. It's like that. Yeah. You know, that's what I would think is say an edgelord is in that way. But I'd appreciate you clearing my point for it. The second thing that I thought was really stupid, I thought was not cool at all, was they were like, you're a beta tester, but you're also a cheater. We're going to call you a beater. And he's like, you were a beater. And I'm like, beater. And he's like, I'm going to own that title. It's like, that's my word now. You can't use that. I was like, that's so stupid. And I guess, you know, Japan things, you know, using English words, it's kind of edgy, you know, that kind of stuff's like how we use like things like weeaboo in our country. But I just like, and he was like, and as he left with the coat, he's like, yes, I'm a beater, and don't you forget it. Edgelord out.
Right. And by the way, when he gets to kill this boss, the last item that he receives is a freaking black trench coat called like the Midnight Cloak or something like that.
That's edgelord. If you end up finding an item that's called the Midnight Cloak that has a collar higher than the bottom of your ear, then you are an edgelord.
Which, by the way, the entire episode, this character is completely relatable, and you think it's going to be the hero, and cool, but also kind of innocent. And then this cloak goes on, and it's like, douche.
Right, it's like he's like me in high school. Like I felt like I was a normal kid, but then I put my Finch shirt on, and I felt like I was nice and emo at that point. You know?
Oh my God, Finch!
Yeah, I love Finch. Another thing that I thought was really funny is that like it really shed a highlight on how bad it would be to actually be a woman in this world. Like everybody's cover's gone, and now all the female avatars turn into men. Imagine being like one of the few women. I mean, you get harassed in general, but imagine being Asuna. You're thinking like, well, why is Asuna, who's the only female in this basically in this game, has to put on a hood and like hide herself because she's a woman?
Right. Like, of these 10,000 players, I would posit that 9,650 are men.
And like it would, and knowing that you could touch them, hit them, like do whatever you want to them, it would probably not even be as like gentle as this show portrays. So I'm just like, I can imagine like people going like, why is Asuna so like hidden and mystical? No, because she's a girl playing a video game. It's gonna happen. And I want to like credit. There's this one YouTube channel that I watch that every week she's like, oh my God, it's a girl is the name of the channel, and it's her just playing Rainbow Six Siege and all the stuff that gets spewed at her from all the dudes that play it. And I just think about Asuna and like how awful that would be.
That's got to be a really brutal thing to watch.
I know it's terrible, but so we can kind of close out on this show.
Yeah.
Would you say this is an Isekai? Would you want to be Kirito in this context? Say you had the best advantages in this world. Would you still be part of it? Or is this an Isekai? Would you say, I am going to take this nerve gear off my head and I'm going to live in the actual real world? Mm-hmm. What do you say, E or EA?
Isekai.
So you don't like the idea of playing a video game with the prospect of death?
No, I don't. I do like the death game thing. I actually dig... I'm fine with the VR concept of getting caught in this world and all of that. But the whole setup of basically being the aforementioned games that we're going to repeat over and over again interests me 0%. I don't want to play them in real life now. I used to go to our mutual friend's house and watch him wander around worlds doing stupid stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm leveling up. I'm grinding. I'm grinding. No interest in doing that or living in that world.
I also think, you know what I want to liken it to? This show is like The Purge, the movie series. It is pretty much run just by the concept. You're in a game. Real, death in the game means death in real life. The character is like good because he's good at video games, but then after that, it becomes like every other story. So I will say like it has these really good moments of figuring out the human condition, but then it gets really shallow at the end, so it's not really worth watching. And then there's also there's several. Just want to let you know there's several books that follow this show. That are where Kirito goes into different video games, not with the same like if you die here, die in real life, it fixes that problem. And one's called Gun Gale Online, which is like a gun-based game, and there's one where you're like Elf Online, where he's now a magical elf. It's just like it kind of runs its course, and people still eat it up. It's one of those things, you know.
So now let me ask you, as you have described this as the patient zero, the opening of the floodgates was Sword Art Online. For you, is it Isekai or Isekai?
I mean, ever since I watched it, it's an EA for me. Like I not just because of like the I could die thing, but because I feel like it is. I watched the whole series. In fact, I watched even more so, like all the seasons. And I just thought to myself, like, there's just too much terminology being thrown out. There's just too much like randomness. It doesn't have enough to keep me. The only thing that the thread that holds the show is the love story between Kirito and Asuna, and even that's weak sauce. So I mean,
it also explains some weird moment. So when Kirito meets this character Klein, Klein says, "You have a little sister in real life? What's she look like? You have a little sister? She must be so hot. Must be so hot. Oh my God. Oh my God." And then after they look in the mirror and they revert to their real form, he hits on Kirito and says, "Hey, you're actually kind of my type." And Kirito says, "Oh yeah, you look better with that scruffy face anyway." What strange exchange was that?
I don't think it was anything other than like, we actually don't look half bad from having this thing done to us, basically, right? Like when you saw the veil get lifted,
so it's not a legitimate Klein making a pass on him.
No, it's basically
like
saying
a joke that, hey, in real life you're not a troll.
Right. You're not only are you a beater, but you're not busted, and that's the important thing in this game.
But is he a master beater?
He's a master beater, Garrett. A dual wielding master beater. All right, we have to move on to the next show.
Yeah.
Once again, the next show that we are doing is Overlord, where we learn about the tales of Momonga, the demon lord.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mean Momonga or do you mean Skeletor?
Yeah, I was hoping at one point he's going to be like, Beastman!
Furry fool, you are mine. I'll drink your ass like wine.
Oh, shout out to all you CKY fans. So, what is this show about? Is it, how much is it drastically different from what we just watched with Sword Art Online? Like, what's the deal?
Same, but more. So whereas SAO is more the FF world,
right.
This is more World of Warcraft with, I would say, a tinge of Dungeons and Dragons,
right? Exactly.
In terms of the characters thrown in there.
So, because you're kind of repeating the same story, what's this? How is this a little bit different than Sword Art
Let me tell you about this entirely unique and never thought of before plotline.
Go ahead, Garrett.
Whereas Sword Art Online is people being trapped in a video game by a malicious game designer.
Right.
In Overlord, we watch our lead character, Mofongo, the Dominican Platanos dish.
How about we, like, the rest of this review, anytime we want to bring up Momonga, let's make up something else like Tatanka.
Yeah. So we find our lead character who looks strikingly like Skeletor in Master of the Universe.
But with like a flashy coat. Like with a big coat, with huge, with like, powerful businesswoman shoulder pads.
It looks like, I know, if you took 1980s businesswoman shoulder pads but made them out of like the horns of a steer,
or the shoulder pads go above your ear, so it's just like, hello.
So this character, when we're first introduced to them, they're sitting in a conference room that has this big sort of Knights of the Round Table type feel with 40 seats. And essentially, he was, I don't know if he was the leader of, but he was certainly a prominent member of a guild in an online game. I think it's called like Iridale.
Yeah, it's called, I'll spell it for you, YGGDRASIL. And
it's pronounced...
Yeah, in honor of Rosh Hashanah, it's called and then also I thought it was really funny because, like, an MMORPG as we know it is a massive multiplayer online role-playing game, but this is a DMMORPG. It's a dive massively multiplayer online role-playing game, which I'm like, it's an adverb now. It's like, not only we're going to be playing with a lot of people, but we're going to be diving massively into this game.
Oh my god!
I was like, that's weird.
So we come across his lead character, and he's in this empty room where there's one other person in it. And again, they are residing and playing in this virtual reality world.
Right. Very similar to Sword Art Online.
He's been playing this game for about 10 years.
Right.
And the game is coming to an end. They're probably going on to a new version. There's going to be an update. And so everyone sort of has to say goodbye to this world, which, if you've ever played video games like this that allow you high levels of customization, it is very sad because if it's something you're passionate about, I'm not going to make fun of it. I work countless hours on my golf swing. Other people work countless hours building these characters and building these worlds, and now they've got to say goodbye to it. So it's like
building a sandcastle for 10 years, and then the big wave just comes in and washes it away.
Right.
It would be disappointing.
And he's lamenting the loss of it, and he sees one by one all of the other members of his guild log off, and he says, you know what? I got to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to work, but it's about to go offline. What could it hurt to stay on until it goes offline and feel that momentous goodbye?
Right.
He waits, but when it goes offline, he doesn't wake up.
Oh no, he's stuck in the game, Garrett!
Oh my god, he's stuck in the game! Mofongo.
Oh, Tatanka. So I'm gonna call him Mofongo. I don't even care what his name is. He not only that, but like being such a nerd. It's like obviously that he's like an unpopular nerd in real life. He like goes through the settings of like the bad. Because another thing that's really crazy about this is that he kind of plays as a bad guy. So he's like the chaotic character in Dungeons and Dragons, meaning like he plays as an evil person, but he does it. But it serves a purpose in the game. And they all made NPCs for some reason. And he like went through the menu of like the big-breasted, demon girl that he had as like his main squeeze, and
Adela or Abella,
and he looked at the settings, and the girl was set to, and he decided to change it to is now in love with Mofongo, and he's
right before it went offline,
right before he stayed as shoulder pad Skeletor man. And this show, like, I don't think you were gonna get a lot of the first two characters, the first two shows, but it's interesting because for several reasons. One is this kind of sets you up to the idea he's going to be an OP character. That's the first thing. He's going to be he's so good at this game. He's pretty much been playing this game for 10 years. Yeah. And he's now kind of an OP character operating in this world. The one thing I thought was interesting is that the guild that he had two rules. The first is that they had to be inhuman. So there's no heroes, no knights, no clerics, no priests, none of that stuff. The second thing is they had to have real jobs. He goes, you have to have stakes. And so it was like, you're going to play this game, and the rules are, if you're going to be in this guild, you got to probably get fired if you're going to do this game. That shows your commitment. Right. And so, just to kind of button it off, he also wants to stage bad guy attacks so that he can now this time around be the hero of this world. So,
well, what's really interesting about this is when he was playing with his friends, clearly they had some sort of hierarchy and who did what. Right. But now that he's alone in this world, he's surrounded by NPCs or non-playing characters. Right. Okay. Now, previous to the shutdown, these NPCs were command takers. Right. There was no independent thought.
Like sit, bow, talk, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
These characters essentially live in his fortress. They do as they're told, all that. Right. When he wakes up, I'm not going to say they have independent thought, right? But they have responses, and he doesn't have to give them direct commands. Think about like playing a game with a DOS-based computer, and there's nothing vague. You had to tell it exactly what to do, and that's what these characters were like. But now he can say, "Go out there and report back what you saw," or come up with an idea to, expand the defenses around.
And they can also like give
word.
Thoughts. They can have opinions. They could have loyalties. Like they legit, and every single NPC is loyal to Momonga, Chikafunga, and also we have another thing that's interesting about this show is that in order to truly test if you can interact with his NPCs, he decided now was a good time, Vemi, to fondle one of his NPCs, and that was an interesting scene.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so as you mentioned before, there was an NPC that he noticed had been written in the code by someone else in his guild who designed this character, that she was a bitch, and he's like, well, that's not very nice, but I'm just going to put is in love with Momonga, is in love with me, ha ha ha. So when he wakes up in this new virtual reality, she is in love with him, and he's testing her responses to what he's gonna say, and he's like, may I touch your breast? And
because she's set to is in love with Ricky Tiki Tambo, No Sar Rambo, Charibar Ruchi Piperi Pambo.
Ricky Tiki Tavi.
Because she's been set to love this man.
Yeah. She absolutely says, go for it. And she's like drooling and her eyes go. And so he takes his claw-like hand, which, by the way,
I can imagine being fondled by like a Skeletor hand too.
Just like you know what it reminded me of is I know she's like a demon hot girl and he looks like Skeletor, but the hand looked like one of those claws that you get that you squeeze it and it's got like the Terminator fingers at the end of it.
Yes, it's exactly what it was like. And you get him at like the Liberty Science Center, like that.
Yes, yes. So as he's contemplating how he can't believe she's reacting. He continues to like shake hands with her chest the entire time.
Like he's like in a business meeting.
And cooing, and it's and then he realizes what he's done. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." There's also later on, she kind of gets into there's another female character who also wants to have Skeletor's babies. And so they're getting into like a fight over it, about how if you really liked him, your panties would be wet too. That was a trip. But
it was, and she's also like a lolly vampire, which is just like
yeah, and but they're throwing out insults like, you have breast implants. And I keep thinking, how? You are virtual reality. You were created fake.
There's like a virtual reality Dr. Zizmore out there, or like
wait a minute. I didn't
use a skin guy. I had to think of a noticeable doctor, and that's the one I came up with.
So to put Sean and Christian from Nip Tuck have have an
There's a virtual world.
Yeah.
So once again, Garrett, we're going to get to our next question, which is the final one to button off the show. It's pretty much the same, save for a few differences. Is this an Isekai or an Isekai?
Isekai.
So you would want to be Skeletor in this world?
Way more than the previous show.
And you can make a lot of like bone jokes.
I mean, right. And I mean, it might be a little lonely, and I'm already starting to get the feeling that some of the NPC characters might start to have a little bit too much independent thought.
Right.
And ultimately turn on him. But I don't know, this, in terms of the show in general, I would watch more episodes of this. Right. I found this funny. I mean, just
there's comedy in it.
Right.
SAO has no comedy in it. It's
right. And like you said before, he plays sort of this badass character. At least that's what the character was. So when these other cast members, these NPCs, were just subservient, he just gave instructions. But now he actually has to like act authoritative. So sometimes he's catching himself in like being too nice and being like, oh, and it's just.
And then he has to put on like the very deep voice when he's ready to talk.
Yeah, there's some fun moments with that.
It's fun. And then, just so you know, Garrett, if you're interested in this style of the getting isekai but becoming an OP character, there's several other shows called Isekai Cheat Magician, who has basically, it's a magician who got isekai'd, and he now has cheat codes. And the second one's called How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, where two big-breasted women decided to summon this character who got isekai'd as a demon lord and accidentally make themselves slaves. So now he's the demon lord who now has two busty slaves. So you're starting to see a pattern, I think.
More demons, more problems.
So let's round this out, Garrett, into a very, I would say, unique and varied experience when you watch the show Tensei Shitara Suraimu Dattaken, which translates to That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, or Champagne for my sham friends, or whatever it was called.
So I have one question about this show.
Right.
Why didn't you tell me I needed to take mushrooms before watching it? Because this was absurdity at its peak.
And it was absurd. And I remember, like, because what I'm noticing when I was watching the anime of it, because I read the manga of this first, and so when I read it, all that stuff that you get of like the thing panning to like the computer voice that's like telling like, oh, this got activated, or this thing you can do this. It's all text in the manga.
Yeah.
But here it's like this like this neurotic like bouncing between the screens, and I thought that was too much too. But
let's not put the cart before the horse.
Right.
Let me give you a little bit of background story.
All right. So tell me what it was like to what happened in that time that you got reincarnated as a slime, Garrett.
All right. So the show opens up with a really weird 1-minute vignette of either Hiroshima or Nagasaki getting...
I remember when I watched, I was like, wait, I don't remember this being a part of it. And then I just moved on. I was like, I remember this part, but I don't remember the first part.
I thought I picked the wrong anime.
Yeah, me too. I was like, wait, this is... I had the same thing, Garrett. Don't worry. I was like, what is this happening?
Right. So we transition to our lead character, who is a 37-year-old male in Tokyo,
modern day Tokyo. So
modern day
where
Tokyo.
I thought I started.
But dude's a virgin because he's never had a girlfriend. And if he really thought about his life in which he's normally content, he supposes that the one thing that would have made him happy was to have a girlfriend.
Right.
So he meets his buddy in the street, and his buddy refers to him as senpai. Now, senpai is a term of affection, but also deference.
Yes. So the difference between, so you probably like get hearing a lot of senseis and senpais, and just for those out there listening, a sensei is someone who has an actual like mastery or of a profession. So when you heard Arrow Manga Sensei, that means that person has a mastery on the idea of like.
So like Master Splinter.
Right. Exactly. He's actually a sensei. We'll actually call him Splinter Sensei, and this also includes teachers. It includes anybody, like doctors. It includes anybody. So us in English would think it means teacher, but what it means is that you're deferring to their skill. Yeah. You can say the chefs, you can say it to many people. When you say senpai, this is someone who is the same station as you, but either they're older or higher up in the hierarchy. So this could be someone who is a year older than you in high school, all the way to, in this case, someone who works with you who maybe has worked 2 or 3 years more than you at the job.
Right.
And it's showing deference to their the seniority, basically.
Okay.
So yeah. Long-winded answer, but I think that hopefully explains it.
All right. So he meets his friend in the street, and his friend has his new fiance with him.
Hello.
And the lead character is kind of like, oh, why is he introducing me to this girl? I guess they want to celebrate or something like that. And it's just sort of a very jovial meeting. And his friend's like, hey, let's go to the restaurant. And then, like you do, there's a man running full speed down the sidewalk,
just like
an 8-inch knife. Right. Just like, I mean, I hope that later on you find out that he's running with a purpose.
Yeah.
Because if not, he is just running down the street, not slashing people indiscriminately, but just like, I'm a unicorn with a knife on my head, and whoever stands in my way is getting stabbed.
Is getting impaled.
So first, the fiance is standing in the way.
So he was it looks like the intended target of the guy's like knife Stone Cold Stunners that he's
her man goes, no! Boom! And pushes her.
Yeah.
But then the lead character goes, Tamara! No! Boom!
Yeah.
And stands in the way and gets impaled with
Straight
this
up
knife. The guy immediately turns around and runs away. Ah!
Yeah. It is such a MacGuffin. Like, I don't know why. So, Garrett, I feel like before we go any further in this show, because that is a ridiculous premise to start with, I want to introduce you to a character that is known in mimetic culture and anime meme culture, and that's a character by the name of Truck-kun, and which is truck, an actual English word for truck, and kun, which is like a fun way of saying someone's name. So I call you Garrett Kun because we're friends. We're in the same age.
Okay.
And so Truck-kun.
K-U-N.
Yes, K-U-N. Yes, it's one of the suffixes of the many suffixes that Japan has. In this case, Truck-kun is the way that like meme characters say of like that helps like people that want to be protagonists in isekais get isekai'd. Like it's like, hi Truck-kun. He's like, you want to get isekai'd? And like runs them over. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna get isekai'd. And like it's become such a joke of like guy who's like not important in life, kind of a loser, gets like viciously killed. Well, just to make this thing move on to the reincarnation part. So
you know what it kind of reminded me of very briefly?
Right.
Was for anyone who follows Batman out there, Bruce Wayne loses his parents at a very young age. And sort of like for the longest time, the canon story was that they were leaving a performance early with his parents, and in the alley, his parents were killed. Now, sort of in a Truck-kun type of way, depending on what movie or TV show you're watching, they manipulate that character to move the story along, because it was always supposed to be a nobody. And then Tim Burton's Batman came out and they said, well, no, it's the Joker. And then Christian Bale's Batman was like, oh, no, it was actually a gangster who worked for Carmine Falcone. And they just keep changing whoever this character is that killed Batman's parents to change the motivation of the story.
And it's as I say, it's a true MacGuffin. It's just it doesn't really matter even though it's very eventful and something you want to pay attention to, it really doesn't matter. Like, he gets hit by a train. Who cares? Just get to the reincarnating part. Or he gets by a truck.
Right.
You know, some stupid thing like that. It's just to move on.
So our lead character, who is, I think you put notes here, Satoru.
Yeah.
Satoru. He's bleeding out on the ground.
Dying. With a smile on his face.
Everywhere. I was eating my sandwich from Wegmans and being like, that's a lot of blood. And his dying words to his friend are, go to my apartment, take my hard drive out of my computer, and throw it in the bathtub.
Garrett, let us make a blood pact today that you would do the same for me. That's what your friendship is.
And like later on, he's like, oh man, I hope he didn't look at it first.
Yeah.
So as he's writhing on the ground,
right.
This is where we transition to what you were talking about. He starts experiencing sort of this inner monologue voiceover that in the anime is stylized as a computer voice. Like
a Siri. Yeah.
Very a la Portal.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
like
even more so, like GLaDOS, yeah.
Right, GLaDOS in the video game Portal, for those out there who don't get the reference. And so he's like dying, and he's like, oh, it's too warm. And then it's like, skill acquired. Thermal balance, you won't be warm or cold. And he's like, oh, the pain. And it's like, skill acquired, pain management, inability to feel pain.
Right.
And so while he's going through all these emotions and all these things, and he's fading into darkness, he's acquiring skills.
Right.
And eventually he wakes up in the form of a snot.
Or in RPG terms, which a slime is a very common, like, first level creature that you have to kill like 4,000 of.
Is it?
So, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're slime. He's a slime, also aka snot. And I guess because of his wishes of not wanting to feel pain, being tolerant to heat, not wanting to get like stabbed again, basically, which anybody probably would. It's like, let me make you this goo monster. Yeah, and so he is a slime, and what that means is that, like, he starts as, like, deaf, blind, like, he has, like, no abilities, but at least, like, he's, like, impervious to stuff, and he goes from having this, like, manly 37-year-old male voice to a, like, it's like little baby voice, essentially.
Right. So he wakes up as a slime inside of a cave, and from this point through the next 2 episodes, it's as if we're in a video game tutorial.
Right, exactly. And like, but like, so much so that every little thing you do, you level up to. That's how like low level he is. It's like, you found a rock, level 1, like that kind of stuff. And he like keeps eating more of these rocks, and it's like, you kept eating more rocks, level 2.
And that's another thing. His ability as a slime is he can consume these materials, and he can store them inside of him, but the size of him never changes.
Right.
I mean, he can expand, but in his regular traveling form, it's not like, no matter, he could consume a boulder and he remains the same size.
Right, exactly. So there is some flexibility to his life. He eventually gets his sight back because what he does is he meets, I don't know, a freaking dragon in this cave, who he ends up befriending, because the dragon's stuck in that cave.
Right, and the dragon has self-esteem issues.
Yes. And you know what I appreciate about the show is there was a lot of comedy in this.
Well,
it's
he's like
this like little snot talking to this like giant dragon. He's like, well, I guess you don't want to be my friend, I'll leave. And he's like, no, I want to be your friend. Like that kind of stuff.
And the dragon's like, oh, honestly, I don't think my magic, I've been in here 300 years, I don't think it would have lasted another 100.
He's like,
oh,
his tiny dragon arms
what would happen if your magic ran out? He's like, oh, it wouldn't be that big deal. I just die.
Yeah. It was actually like a really funny like interchange between these two like very stark differently creatures. And so and eventually just to kind of help button off what happens in the show is the dragon says, I haven't been able to leave this cave, and Slime Boy offers to eat him, and I'll carry you with me,
which won't kill him, right?
Which won't kill him, but you'll live within me. And the dragon's like, hell, I don't want to be stuck in this cave anymore, so why not? Go ahead and eat me, Slime Man.
Sure.
And he goes, well, what about, but if I'm eating you and you're in me, we can't just be individual names. We got to come up with our own like personal one person name.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I don't know. What kind of name will we have? Storm? No. Because you're the storm dragon. How about lightning? No. How about Tempest? And he asked he asked the dragon, hey, dragon, how about the name Tempest? Tempest is like, I don't like it. I love it. So eventually he gets eaten and he takes the dragon out. I don't really think we talk too much about the dragon, but then we run into the goblins who are once again other first level.
Well, no, but before we get there, on his way out of the cave, he then meets a snake who he kills and he gains their ability. Then he meets a centipede. Then he meets a spider.
This is eating new friends.
Horrific cave filled with monsters you have ever been in.
And he's just like Waka Waka Pac-Maning every single one on his way out. But eventually, like, the idea is that, just to kind of give you a gist, if you were going to think about whether you're going to watch this.
Wait, what did Pac-Man and Fozzie Bear come together to create a character? Just like Pac-Man, Waka Waka.
Yeah. I would say that if I was to onomatopoeia Pac-Man's eating songs, he goes waka 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 waka.
Okay.
Right? And when he dies, he goes.
Yeah, agreed. Continue. Please.
So basically, he goes out and he meets the Goblin clan. He meets all the other like low-level creatures, and they're kind of like bullied by the adventurers of the world. Yeah. And so he decides to kind of like be their like the peacemaker. He's like, I'm gonna watch over you guys because I now have this freaking dragon in me. Yeah. I can now be your leader. They're like, ooh, I can feel your aura. You're definitely a high character. So it's an interesting take on like the idea of like you start as like a nobody, and because you have like that empathy of being like a nobody, you can take on all these misfits, and like it kind of reverses the idea of like the adventurers getting beaten up by the outside world. It's like helping the outside world catch up and be friendly with the people. So I like it. It's an interesting show, but you know, the question I would say is, Garrett, is this an Isekai? Would you want to be reincarnated as a slime? Doesn't mean you have to be stabbed for this situation. Just to say that, like, when you die at the ripe old age of 107, you come back, you know, as a slime. Is this an Isekai or an Sekai?
I think I'd need to, though I don't want to, watch more of the show to find out if he could ever gain some semblance of a human form again.
Spoiler alert, in episode 4, the answer is yes.
Okay, then it could be a Isekai.
Okay, cool. Okay.
If you stayed as a globule, you are an Isekai.
If I can no longer have a penis, then that's an EA for me all the way. I don't care how isekai'd I got. I'm not doing it. So, some other shows that follow the like weak character kind of like making their way, also having really long names, is Death March to a Parallel World. Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? As well as So What If I'm a Spider? Which is like follows like the what if I was a goblin? What if I was a spider when I reincarnated? What happens if I started as like your shoe? It's like that kind of style of like show. It gets a little old, but at least this one lends itself to some comedy.
I kind of, as you're saying this, I wish they had this version of the show, but as your lead character, you would be that crab creature from One Punch Man.
Yeah, I'm just like, with
what happened if
like,
I became top half crab, lower half human?
The reverse mermaid crab man? Yeah. I think I forgot what his name was. It was like Crab Tar or something stupid like that.
Crab Tar.
Yeah, Crablante, that was it. Oh, God. I would have been mad at myself if I forgot his name. So, Garrett, we are going to have two kind of Weeb and Noob scores to close out our show. Instead of just scoring each individual show, what we're going to do is first is you're going to rank which one, now that you know, basically all the isekais are the same, but these kind of like different flavors. Which flavor do you prefer first? You know, is it the moody cut type and Sword Art Online? Is it the like OP character, or is it the like weak to strong character? So how would you rank your shows on this?
This is, of course, not indicative of quality, but in style that appeals to me. Third place would be Sword Art Online. Second place would be Slime. And first place would be Overlord. In general, this is not a genre that speaks to me.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to have to rank them, I'm going to go with what amused me and entertained me the most.
Right.
And in that way, Overlord was the most entertaining. Slime was the most trippy and
Yeah.
had its moments. And SAO was the one that brought the least amount of entertainment to me.
Right. I would honestly agree with you, save for switching Slime and Overlord.
Okay.
Because once again, I read these first. I read how that time I got reincarnated as a Slime.
Yeah.
And Overlord, and I think I appreciated Slime more because it got to the point quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Overlord seems to like pull in this I got this character now. I got this person that loves me. I got this person that respects me. And what do I do with this world now that I'm part of it? It's slower. It has its really cool moments, but I tend to think that the Slime at least gets to the point quicker. Even if like I'm gonna read a dumb isekai again, like I want to just like let's wrap it up. Get this thing moving. And Sword Art Online, I appreciate what it did to the genre. I appreciate its place in Western culture.
Right.
I also love the memes that come out of it. Hating on the edgelord and hating all the dumb things that come out of this genre now because of it. And I think just for that alone, the jokes that come out of this, I appreciate it. So even though it's third place, I don't say because it's bad. So
right. If you are into RPGs, which is a massive section of the section of the community at large, or if you're into MMORPG, that's going to be your number one.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
If you're going to feel like it's speaking to you,
and it's not too goofy, so you're like, oh man, this takes seriously this thing that I love, which I think is great, and I think that's why a lot of people like it. So let's give it a quick. Let's give
edgelords are cool,
and I got a big sword, man. So let's actually give us a score on the whole genre, right? And I would say for me, and this is a very prejudiced scoring, I give Isekai like a 4.5. Like this is the lowest score I'm going to give it, and I think for most fans, we're getting sick of it. It's like it's too many. You're also getting into really weird things. Like one is that like he reincarnates with his mom, and his mom somehow is a random like sword fighter who's better than him, and so it's like this weird like, oh mom, you're ruining my game, but she's also hot. Like they don't add too much to this thing. It just kind of gets only slightly higher, and but there's just a lot of it. It's like imagine if you're trying to make a cake, and you can use 3 layers of thick cake, or you can make like 400 crepes and get to the same height. I think the crepes is what they're doing with Isekai, and I don't like it as much. I love video games, but I don't need an Isekai. I don't need a video game story. I play video games for that, and I think video games serve that.
You also could deal with 1 or 2 of them,
right?
But you don't need 200 produced in the last 5 years,
right? And I also don't like. Also, weirdly enough, I don't like the J.R.R. Tolkien style. I'm not a huge fan of elves and wizards and things. I'd prefer.
Bite your tongue, sir. We played Elder Scrolls together.
But here's the thing. How much of that was like, there wasn't any dwarves. There wasn't any like my bow and my axe. Like there's none of that. Yeah. But it was still kind of cool. I don't know.
Joining thieves guilds and executing missions.
It was fun, and like I don't know. I just feel like that is not more my style. I like the fantasy aspect of Final Fantasy when it's not too that elvish way of looking at it. So 4.5 for me. If anybody's gonna hang me for that, I apologize, but that's literally my thoughts on it. What would you say for a new fan?
4. And it's a 4 because it's hyper formulaic. The barrier to entry is you have to like this one style. And you have to want to see it over and over and over.
You get the language. You have to understand.
And you kind of feel out of it if you don't get the references that are being made. Also,
a lot of the shows are like in menu form. Like you're like, this is me going through a menu. Like I don't want to look at that. I don't need to look at that. Like
that's why I don't play those games. I don't like selecting my move.
Yeah. It's like imagine playing your favorite sport, and it's like I'm going to do this swing. Boop, boop,
look, boop, boop. I know 2 things about video games. I'm a button basher, and in Madden, you always run fly routes.
Right, exactly. You find the fastest, you got a 9.9 speed, and you just throw straight at him. So I would say here's the thing. We're very specific people. We have our own taste and stuff like that. Don't let it discourage you from it. I would say still go for it if you want to know what this genre is all about. You're not going to really be able to avoid it, So you might as well pick one that you like. Might as well pick one that is interesting to you in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
But with that being said, always, it's just as important, because we're pretty biased on this one, to hear your thoughts. Is Isekai the style that you actually really like and we're just kind of being too much of fuddy-duddies about it? Or is it something you kind of concur with, that it's just an oversaturated, too much of a mess, too formulaic thing that we thought it was? Let us know in the comments below, because we really want us to continue the conversation, especially with something as controversial as this topic. Also follow us on anchor.fm as well as on Twitter, and make sure you give us a 5-star review on your anywhere your podcasts are found. Before we close off the show, Garrett, what are some last things, your thoughts on Isekai in general?
They should do an Isekai with a character based on Bill Murray, because it is the Groundhog Day of anime.
It is.
Because it is the same day over and over and over again with new ways to kill yourself.
I can imagine like a Bill Murray with like a sword. Let's make that anime happen, Japan. Come on.
He just whispers in Scarlett Johansson's ear.
So now Garrett and I are going to go play in traffic until we find Trucktoon and make our way right out into our whole new world now, and give you all a good see you next week.
Take care, y'all. Be well.
Oh no, I'm trapped in this parallel world, and the only way I'm getting out is by you hitting that subscribe button.
This week, we may have looked at Isekai, but we think it's a good idea to put in the comments below what we should watch next.
Promise me something. My computer's hard drive. I need you to dump it in the bathtub and fry it. Huh?